Hi everyone, this is Dr. Raquel Butler from Integrated Veterinary Therapeutics.
And Sophie Vandenberg from Equine Postulate. And we welcome you to the Equine Functional Posture Podcast, your ultimate source for insights into the influence of functional posture on biomechanics, health, and overall well-being of horses.
Whether you're a seasoned equestrian, an equine professional, or simply a horse enthusiast, this podcast is designed to help you understand the critical aspects of functional posture.
Tune in each week as we discuss practical tips, delve into expert interviews, and explore the latest research in the impact of functional posture on equine anatomy, physiology, movement, and more.
Let's create a world where we empower our horses to be in a mental, emotional, and physical balance. Hi everyone, welcome to this episode where we're talking about exercises to enhance your horse's proprioception. So if you go back to episode 3, we explained what proprioception was. And then we wanted to follow it up with some exercises in this episode. So how are you going today, Soph?
Hey Raquel, going really well. We have some great practical tips for everybody and also examples where we've seen positive changes or instances where proprioception hasn't been great in horses in context of training and body work. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just a reminder for people, like proprioception is the horse's ability to know where their body parts are in space. So they know where you are, they know where your feet are, they know where their body is. It is really important for balance and stability. It also makes your horse a lot safer to deal with because they are aware of you and they just have kind of an improved general awareness of their environment and the way they move through their environment. So it's not just important for, like these exercises are really valuable for every horse, like nerve injuries, like if you're rehabbing a horse from a nerve injury, if you're rehabbing a string halt horse, if you're rehabbing a horse that's had some other neurological deficits, but it's also really useful for your everyday horse, especially if you want them to navigate obstacles. So whether that's working equitation, whether it's out on a trail, whether it's show jumping, especially important in eventing because those jumps don't easily move. And so you want to know that the horse is very aware where their legs are in all of those situations. And I find generally with improved proprioception, like how improved behavior is, like they're just so much more confident in their surroundings.
Definitely. We even discussed the fact that it could have a lot of value for horses who are coming back from things like losing a lot of muscle mass if they've been very thin or something like that has happened where they've built a lot of muscle mass back up and are looking to re-coordinate.
Yeah, so when you're kind of thinking about proprioceptive exercises, you want the horse to think about the placement and awareness of their own body. So I recently did a functional posture clinic and we had an array of horses there, but it was really interesting watching some of the horses like regain their own awareness and how it gave them so much confidence and how then behaviorally they just became like so much more present in those moments. So it's a lot of the times I think we control our horses. So a lot of the time, like we're always telling them what to do. Come over here, go over there, trot, walk, canter, jump, lead, stop. And one of the biggest things that I teach in my functional posture clinics, and we talk about it a fair bit in the online course as well, but like I want a horse to control their own movement. So I want a horse to initiate forward themselves without me pulling, and I want them to initiate stop themselves without me having to like pull on them to a stop. Like for them to have control, it gives them so much like reassurance. They never had us to control them before, and some horses only learn that like it's almost like they forget that they have control over their own limbs, and that sometimes we have to show them that's possible again. So I think this would be a good place. Do you want to share, before we go into all of the exercises, do you want to share you've got a couple of foal stories?
I do. One in particular has to do with like what you were just saying about them understanding their own body and having control over how they move. When I first put a halter on a foal and we're going out into a space and I'm asking them to start thinking about following a feel, usually first into a turn, because then you're not, trying to ask them straightforward, and you can put them on an arc with their mum. When you start introducing the concept that they have an external motivator, so that's, a feel on the halter, even if it's just a vibration, but they're trying to achieve something to follow a feel or to get a release of pressure, there comes a time when their movement becomes quite discombobulated. So they often bump into their mum or their limbs get a little bit crossed, even when you aren't pulling on their head. And we've talked about it before, and it seems like their focus travels outside of their body. So they're more concerned on trying to get figuring out exactly kind of like how they would move like one particular leg or what exactly you're asking for. And so their movement becomes quite choppy and different. And what happens is, as long as you can not put them in a position where they need to brace, but you can just show them that if they think about their own body, they can find a place of coordination where their gait, it's almost like a moment of realization in their body where their gait synchronizes again. So naturally, they just, a horse strikes off into walk and they choose the walking gait, like their limbs coordinate to go through that 4-beat walk pattern. And it just clicks for them again that they can, I can pick up that 4-beat pattern. And when you ask me to lead with you, I use my own body as a whole, and I'm in my body and I use it to follow or to move in a certain direction. But it seems to be a really big neural reset to I have to be back in my own body in order to use it in a coordinated fashion to move around.
Mm.
And so that seems to be a really pivotal moment where, so the foals that I'm working with too are, anywhere from actually about 2 to 2.5 months old, all the way up to nearly 9 months, sometimes the ones that are older. So there's still, many of them are towards the stage where they're developing their postural stability. And it just means that definitely for anybody who's handling their foal, as a tip too, you have to be really careful at that stage, because if even with an intentionally soft level of pressure, I'm influencing their movement like that, you can imagine that if you consistently reinforce them moving in a way that was bracy, choppy, uncoordinated, and then you have released to that, so you've rewarded that kind of movement, it becomes quite ingrained. And also their expectation about the kind of pressure they're going to receive from you and how to respond to it, they brace quite automatically if you're not soft. And so at the very starting point, you'd want to be doing your absolute best to just have them thinking forward towards you. So always having their focus and their awareness on coming forward to motion rather than bracing against it. And I think possibly that very start of movement would be something that affects them deeply over a long period of time.
Yeah, I think you're setting up a neural pathway there that's like probably integral for the way that they respond to external stimuli, to pressure, to going forward. Like I don't know how many horses I feel, and yeah, we can say, oh, they didn't learn pressure and release or whatever, but how many horses I feel that when I place a feel on them, there is no forward. And you know, a lot of these horses are been ridden for a really long time, like they've been handled by humans for a really long time. And I mean, it would be amazing to know where that started with those horses, because perhaps it started right back in those moments that you're talking about, that they learnt to kind of have a slight brace against the pressure, and they didn't learn how to find forward motion with relaxation and connection to both the external and internal environment. Because you know, when they're just running around as foals in the paddock, their legs just do what they do. Like they don't have to kind of make those connections, and then the external environment is what it is. But in that situation where you're handling them, you're kind of bringing those two things together in a very concentrated way. That's probably for the first time in their life. And yeah, it's probably very integral to how they respond to pressure forever.
in that space. And I do think that, just possibly controversial, but it's one reason that I think that driving, like using a flag or something to drive them for the very first initial, teaching them how to come forward to pressure, isn't the highest form of training that I would want for them. I think it certainly works in terms of shaping a behavior, but when we're talking about having your focus and awareness on your body and how it moves, for your initial, like your very formative memories in relation to movement, like to the lead or to the feel, when you drive, you'll nearly always, even if you apply pressure to ask them forward and then try and drive them forward with, you know, a flag or some kind of stimulus, they're really moving away because they're unsure of the stimulus. So they're worried or they're in fear. And I don't think that's a great place to start or a great memory to hold in your body or in your fascia when you associate with movement, because you're never going to be in your body if you're scared.
Yeah, yeah.
And also because they, if you watch their eyeball, their eye actually, like, even if their head is facing forward, they'll always watch what's driving them. And so they're not thinking forward and moving forward. They're actually looking behind them and then jumping forward in choppy strides. So I think the best form is to draw them forward to a feel, personally. And it's also great to do it on mum.
Yeah, and I wonder, because when you mentioned the foal before, we were talking about how I see this a lot in bodywork sessions as well. Like there will come a point in a bodywork session where like they can get a bit wobbly on their legs, or when I allow them to walk, they're like really slow, and it's almost the same as you're describing. Like they're a bit disconnected, a bit discombobulated, like they just yeah, not connecting. And at that point, like for me, the most important thing is exactly what you just said there, like not to drive them, not to push them, not to pull them, and allow them to just find, like I'll just direct their motion. So like I'll direct it like in a gentle figure of eight, or you know, I tend to take them off the owner at that point often, because I can then follow that feel with them until I feel like their legs have come back and they've kind of connected back into their body. And I usually find at that point, you know, it's like a big shift in it's in on so many levels actually for that horse. I think like it's in their it's it's kind of the same thing, like it's in their ability to connect to their own body, it's in their ability to respond to their environment, it's in their ability to find forward and balance and stop and balance. And at that point I'll have horses that were the owner was having to pull them along a lot, or pull them a lot to stop, and then the horse just becomes like super light and super responsive. So it's almost like a reset of what you're talking about. Perhaps they missed that as a foal or whatever, and then they're having a reset moment post bodywork for whatever reason, whether it's because they've had injuries, trauma, the way they've been handled. But I find it's integral, and it really shifts everything after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we're kind of talking about this, obviously we're talking about reestablishing neural input and and the information processing within the horse's body and their ability to coordinate and activate themselves appropriately, which is really important for nerve function. So that's why all of this stuff is very helpful for any neurological condition. And there's lots of exercises that we can do. So one of the exercises is one step. So giving the horse the opportunity to feel what one step feels like, to feel they have the control of that one step, and that they have the awareness. And one step could be like one step forward. I'll discuss how we use a pole. It could be one step back. It could be one step stepping the hind leg under. It could be one step like sideways, like getting them to step one step towards you or one step away from you without crossing their legs in that situation, like really waiting on one leg and then stepping the other leg and then rebalancing, and giving them the time to do that within their own balance. So we don't tell them you have to do this one step in 1 second. We say, I'm asking you to do the one step, but however long it takes you to do that step, I'm just going to keep having the door open here, but I'm going to wait for you to find the motion within yourself, because I can force a horse to do the one step in 1 second, but it will never change the pathway. And they'll do it like what you just said. They'll do it with brace and more awareness on me and less awareness on their own body. And we want that one step to be connected to themselves and then in relaxation. So you do that with the foals, don't you? But like with picking up their legs?
I do definitely find that when it comes to picking up their legs, are you thinking about like how I would hold them and lower them slowly to the ground, or handling them to make them aware and confident with?
Yeah, just the awareness and the confidence, and then telling that story about the little foal that got stuck.
That's like in the fence. So I have had the experience of working with a foal for about 13 days for somebody, and then being there when this foal actually walked straight up to the fence. And so over that 13 days, going through a process of like being incredibly comfortable with me at all spaces around their body. So like them going through a process of being like, oh, I'm incredibly relaxed while you're standing behind me and to the side of me at my back legs, etc. And then conditioning them to be okay with being touched on the legs, and then me holding onto their leg and them grounding the leg, and then me taking my hands away so they feel very confident in like leaving the hand on the ground, and the sensitivity of the leg is lowered, but in a way that they feel relaxed about it. So you're looking for a soft eye, a soft muzzle, them just going into a nice sleepy state and feeling good. I find that stroking the legs really slowly makes a big difference, and we'll probably talk about that later in this anyway, exercise of proprioception. But this foal in particular was really bad for kicking, and had a lot of sensitivity with their back legs. And so ideally you just circumvent that by going as slowly as you can and not using the neural pathway to kick as little as you possibly can, so that it doesn't become reinforced. And then I actually ended up with that foal, once they were comfortable, putting a rope all over their back legs and making sure that you could touch everywhere and get right up under their groin. But when I got there, obviously on the 14th day, that foal wandered over to the fence, and then the fence kind of like stopped on a small angle, and I don't know what they were looking at or thinking, but he just kind of stumbled into the fence and then has just lifted one leg up and somehow gone through some chicken netting and got stuck in there. And it was a bit of a like, oh my God moment for me, because the owner wasn't there in the moment. And so I thought I'll just pick up a halter and slowly walk over. But as I'd gone to walk all the way around the outside of their paddock, he just stopped and really thought about his legs. And I could see his mum standing close by behind, and she was looking at him almost like, oh no, like the fence is pinging and it's making a lot of noise. There was like plain wire that was twanging. Thankfully, obviously it wasn't electric, but the foal had a slow and thoughtful response to being in the fence, and slowly and thoughtfully picked himself out and walked backwards out of it. And I really think that having a connection to his limbs, feeling comfortable being touched all over them and being well prepared for that situation has prevented an injury that probably would have
potentially a
been,
life-changing injury.
things that, for foals, they get little cuts on their hocks or their legs, they just go septic so quickly. And if you haven't already handled them, they're very difficult to treat as well. They can be like explosive little ping pong balls, and your first experiences treating them, touching the most painful part of them while they're scared and full of adrenaline, is not very therapeutic either. So yeah, I really think that having a connection to the limbs is one of the greatest things that you can do for preventing injury and ensuring that your horse has an acceptable standard of welfare as well. I mean, it really ties in like that whole biopsychosocial system of like the body should be healthy, but the mind also needs to take a part in that. And I just think it's a good standard of welfare to set them up with a connection to their body and not steal that from them, so that when the time comes, they can rely on it to get themselves out of a pickle when they need to.
Yeah, 100%. Like I've had Ellie a couple of times stuck between a fence and some trees, where there's been like ring lock wire and and things like that. And I was probably more panicking in those situations than she was, because I could see all the potential bad things that could happen in that situation. But both times she calmly backed out of those situations. And I'd done a lot of proprioceptive work with her early on. And yeah, I just directed her like direction. And she was calm as a cucumber. So definitely helps in many ways, not just from a work perspective either. So one of the exercises that we do in the equine functional posture course is with one pole. And when I'm doing the one pole exercise, I like to look how horses approach poles just normally, like whether they just walk over them in autopilot or whether they acknowledge them, and what they're kind of see how their body moves over the pole. Do they knock it? Do they hit it? Do they lower their head? Do they lift their head? Do they kind of put a little bit of pressure on the owner? Do they rush over it? Do they lose their balance? So initially I just ask people just walk over the pole and I observe. And then I want the horse to the owner to stop in front of the pole, and I want the horse to acknowledge the pole, because as we talked about in episode 3, sight, touch, sensation, like all of those things are part of proprioception. So I want to see the horse physically sniff, bite, paw, something to the pole. Because a horse that's not comfortable or confident with their legs or their balance, they will totally ignore the pole and they offer me all sorts of things. Like I will go sideways around the pole, or, I'll back out of it, or I'll just go to sleep here and pretend that the pole's not there. So recently, I did a clinic and we had one horse who really struggled with the pole, and which horse was that? Yeah, he didn't really want anything to do with the pole, so he'd try to go sideways. And I think in the end, we made it easier for him and gave him some carrots around the pole and kind of tried to make it a bit of a more positive experience. And then we only asked, we simplified the exercise, so we didn't ask him to balance, because I want to get them to the point where they can stop one front foot over, one back foot over, anywhere in walking, and they can stay perfectly straight and balanced without pushing on the owner at all, and I could stop them at any point. Anyway, this one horse walks in. So she's been doing some lessons with Tori because we did a combined clinic with Tori Jeffries and myself. And the horse walks in And I said, just walk the horse over the pole. But her feel was so good that she felt her horse stop. And he stopped. He had the worst balance at the start of the weekend. He stopped before the pole and she felt him, so she let him stop. He stopped and he sniffed it and he checked it all out. And then she just opened the door and waited for him and like supported him. And then he slowly like stepped over his front legs. And then his back legs were a bit harder, so he would lose his balance. So the one thing she needed to do was help him stay like super straight. So the back legs were a little bit harder, but he stayed really calm and relaxed. And then I said to her, oh, that's right. He stepped his front legs over and he turned his head. So his back legs weren't over yet. He turned his head and he used his eyes and he looked at the pole from one side and then he turned his head the other way and then he looked at the pole in the other eye. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I had this on video. Of course I didn't. And then he figured out how to get his back legs over. So he did that a couple of times. And then I said to her, okay, now take his eyesight away and just keep his head in neutral. Well, the look on his face, if this horse, like she was super aware and she had amazing, she's developed her feel over many, many years. So she had amazing feel. But when we took away his sight, his face was like, his eyes widened, his ears went back, his face tightened. And he was like, oh my God. And you could see he was just at that point of like, if any more pressure was put on him, he was going to explode. Because he's like, I can't control my legs without looking. And so this is a test of proprioception, but also in development, you want the horse to be able to go over obstacles, around obstacles, and they know where their legs are, where the obstacle is, without physically having to look at it. So she waited, she stopped, like she felt him, she waited till he relaxed and then allowed him to step over the pole. But that moment like was key for her in her feel or probably in everything else she'd done for the whole weekend, you know what I mean? Like it was bringing together the things she'd been doing in her lessons. It was bringing together his ability to, like he was really struggling to control one front leg. So his control of that front leg. And yeah, from that moment, like each time it just became more and more relaxed, more and more relaxed. So until that horse is comfortable, confident, and moving over that pole without knocking it, you can stop them in any place. Then you don't want to progress to adding extra poles. And then once they can do the one pole, you can add in 2 poles like haphazardly, 3 poles, 4 poles, 5 poles, but like that can take weeks depending on the horse. And then we call it like pick up sticks, where the poles are just haphazardly placed there, but you really want to look at the stress on their face. It tells you so much information about how they feel about controlling their own body. If their face is stressed or they stop and don't want to do it, then you need to make it simpler and wait until they relax. Like I can't reiterate that enough.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
How do you use backing up as a proprioceptive tool?
I think just backing up by itself is really important, like their ability to not worry about what's behind them or where their legs are. And obviously we need to back them, right? Like we need to back them out of a float. If we've got a straight load float, you need to back in dressage tests, and you need to, if you're doing working equitation, like you back around a curve, or in the high levels, they actually back around poles, like S shape around the poles. Yep. So the more awareness they can have of that ability to back from a proprioceptive, like I know where my hind foot is going to go, I know where all my feet are going to go. Like I was practicing with Ellie as a precursor to float training. I was practicing with the pole, stepping forward over the pole and then backing over the pole, but only like one step at a time. So it goes back to that one step aspect. And just to build the confidence so that then when you've got to back out of a float, which is often an uneven downward surface, that they feel confident and comfortable and that they have control of their legs. So I'd say backing's probably really important if you've got incorporating anything like that. And they're also their ability, to do it without looking. That's gonna help them a lot too.
Definitely. In our last episode on proprioception, we talked about trail riding and the value that comes in with the variable mental stimulation that lots of horses really love going out for a trail ride, especially if they're, confident going out or they're with friends. The benefits, I know certainly here, I couldn't go anywhere without it being challenging, with like between rocks, logs, like being on a slope, rough gravel, etc. But trail riding can offer you lots of different things that help with proprioception, including stepping over logs, small ones, challenging and changing surfaces, navigating rocks, navigating, up and down the bank of a road, all sorts of things that come in to make a really big difference. They just build up your horse's ability to navigate. Experienced trail horses are unbelievable with their
their lip
foot
awareness.
placement. Like unbelievable. Their ability to pick small spaces for their feet to go in between rocks, or or on rocks, navigating between them, getting up between trees. I mean, it's actually, I think I mentioned in that episode too, but when I was in Peru last year, like I saw some horses doing insane things, going up like the side of a mountain with like a massive drop off the side, carrying these big packs. They had gas bottles on them.
Yeah.
Like they were, it was so impressive. And you see, lots of really awesome things come from trail horses. And surfaces also can be a really useful tool. Simple and cheap options include things like knee mats from Bunnings. There's also surefoot pads. And I have also had people who I think their horses have had room for improvement with proprioception bodywork clients, where I've been able to tell them, I think that if you don't have a lot to go on or use here, you should just walk between all the different surfaces that you have. So like walk on the driveway and then like mindfully, slowly walk onto the grass, and then walk back on the gravel and then walk over a pole and go over to the sand, or even, a few steps on concrete can make a big difference. But it's just like the variable input for mindful connection down to the feet.
Yeah, and letting the horse do that at their own kind of tempo, however they need to move to navigate those surfaces. And the other option, like, so what you said there, if they've got those, if they can't trail ride, but using the different surfaces they have around, but you can also like set up an obstacle course for your horse. So you could, and you can let them do it themselves. So you could I remember actually, just out of memory, a few years ago at Easter, it was when I had Patch and I was doing Liberty stuff with her, and I said to my nieces, set me up an obstacle course, and then I'll get Patch to do it at Liberty. And I can't even remember what we did now, but like, there were cones, and then there were like, I had to like go to this spot and do some exercise, and then trot over here and do something else, and then back up. And so you can actually make it pretty fun for the horse, like doing it at Liberty, like if you've got a space. But you could put things like cardboard on the ground. You could like well, I've got a bridge, but you can make it like a bridge, so they can kind of step up and down off that. You can put mats, like you said. You could use different thicknesses of mats from Bunnings, or yoga mats from Big W, so you could kind of place them around. You could put a little area of shavings, like you could. And then you just like plant little carrots everywhere, so they like walk over all the different surfaces themselves. So it actually becomes like not just like it's proprioception, but it's also very stimulating for the mind as well. Like Ellie has a hay ball, and like she'll push that along. Like that's a proprioceptive exercise, all those big balls, and like, so they kind of are pushing it around like in the area, and things like that are really good for proprioception. So, or just setting yourself up a little course where you go, okay, I yield the shoulders here, and I back up a little here, and I walk over this surface here, and I do one step of the hind limb here, like kind of set up a little fun thing to do. It's amazing how the horses, like, they just become so much more interested when you do those sorts of activities. So, and then if we talk about other ways, so if we talk about things that we can put on the horses to help with their proprioception, or yeah, including our hands, like what's some things that you've seen? I know you've done at Tellington, you've done workshops with Sinead and Robin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were fantastic because it was just really great to see lots of different horses in a setting responding differently, but all making improvements to lots of different small, very uncomplicated obstacles or tactile inputs. So at that clinic, groundwork clinic, we were doing small things like having TTouch wraps on them. So that was on their legs and around their body as they were moving. And it was just very grounding and very centering, especially for some of the horses who were a little bit more stressed in the arena. They were, they really needed some help coming down and being in their body. They had massive releases, having those TTouch wraps on. Other option.
The TTouch wraps, just for people who don't know, they're like a stretchy kind of bandage that you place around the horse in different configurations depending what part of the body you want to influence or bring awareness to. And so, yeah, they can be super beneficial in those situations. Like, try to get most of my clients to have one because I just think they're so valuable.
Definitely. And I think one of the most valuable Tellington tools is their wand, which is like a kind of like a soft dressage whip that has
so
no
nice to hold. Yeah.
It's nice to hold, and it has a really nice surface, so it feels very therapeutic, and you can gently tap that on hoof capsules. Hoof capsules have huge amounts of Ruffini and Pacini corpuscles in particular. They're receptors that take on
Pressure
vibration
and
input.
touch and vibration. Yep.
Yeah, and a lot of and thermoreceptors as well. They have quite a lot of thermoreceptors around the frog, etc., in the foot. So tapping of the wand on the hoof is very useful, and also stroking down the sides of the leg. It just like it's a lot of very therapeutic tactile input that really grounds the horse and connects them to their limbs, and they don't need to be looking at them. You're just touching them and their awareness is there. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I've also used tape on the limbs and coronet bands for some horses as well, and that's been really influential.
Yeah, or even just on the front of the cannon bone, like to just create a bit more awareness of that, like just a piece of tape somewhere on the front of the leg, whether it's on the knee, the cannon bone, the front of the fetlock, just to create a different sensation input into the horse's legs. And then like you talked about kind of touching them to ground them like through their legs, also tapping them to get them to pick up their leg, because they pick up their legs in motion. But if they've had an injury or they kind of lack that connection to their limb and their ability, when I assess from a bodywork perspective, I always just place my hand down on the leg and ask them to pick it up without pulling them first. I just want to see, do they respond to me touching their leg? Do they respond to me being in that position? Do they want to pick up their leg? So seeing whether they respond to you tapping their leg, can they figure out which leg you're tapping? I've had horses offer me the other leg, which can be because they don't want to pick up that one. And then how do they control it in the lift, and how do they control it in the downwards? because you know, a healthy functioning horse will control it in lifting the leg, and they'll control it in putting it down. Whereas you do get some horses, when you drop the leg, they just slam it down, like they're missing that kind of level of control. So if that is the case, then I will prepare them for that, but still allow them to put their own leg down. So that can actually be an exercise. Pick it up, let them put their own leg down. So that's a good one. And then I guess an extension of that is putting something around the coronet band. It could just be a bell boot, you know, if they've never had a bell boot on before. It could be a hair scrunchie, like just your hair, like elastic. Or it could be more advanced and you put like little sensory bracelets on, but you do have to know what you're doing and obviously prepare the horse adequately for that. You don't want them to freak out and go running because you can't get it off. So you do need to make sure they're very aware that it's around their foot before they walk off. So like picking the foot up and down, getting them to take one step, you know, those sorts of things before you just let them out on the lunge and then they go stupid. But bracelets can be really useful, but with any of this proprioceptive tactile stuff, it's short sessions. So you're not leaving it on for like an hour. You're not doing it every time. You want to make sure it's still a novel input into the system so that you still get a response to that. So it's, yeah, just thinking about the application and what you want to achieve there. And then the last one is Equiband. Equiband, you know, can be a bit proprioceptive, but also is creating resistance. So it's something I'd use to support them using their core and hind end while doing other proprioceptive exercises, you know, just to promote more correct movement in that. So yeah, Equiband is something I'd probably use. Also, if I had a horse just really unstable core, I'd probably kind of see which one worked for it better, TTouch wraps or Equiband, and just progress from there. So that can also be a great input. So if we're incorporating in our training plan, Soph, how would you kind of recommend that people just incorporate proprioceptive work in their training or in their life?
In training, I would be recommending it to be small sessions, like really small, mainly because you are relying on putting in sensory input that the horse takes on, and then they make decisions about how they're going to respond to that. But it's neural input, you know, you're not so much training that you're not like conditioning a muscle, you're just trying to get the information through almost like an activation. And so small sessions and more frequently, you know, or even twice a week is going to make a big difference. You can do it before work to allow the horse to ground and be in their own body. So, and that one thing that's really good for that is getting them to rock. So you can hold on to their wither and rock them on their front legs and put a hand over their sacrum and rock them on their hind legs. And that's really good before you pick up their feet as well, because you get them to think about where they're placing the other three and set them up in a healthy way so that they're stable and secure. And if you can do that consistently, they also recognize the pattern, and you're giving them the chance to, you're essentially telling them, hey, by the way, we're doing this thing that we often do. Why don't you put yourself in a position of power, and you can anticipate and help yourself best that you can in this situation. So you can do it before work or things like the farrier for a few minutes. Yeah, like we said, sessions a couple of times a week. And that lots of breaks and short sessions is going to be really key. What else would you say?
Yeah, the breaks are key to establishing those neural pathways, like the break within the session. Like if the horse says, I need a minute, give them a minute, you know, until they're able to do whatever the exercise is, whether it's lifting their leg. Like don't just think, oh, I have to just keep asking harder. Like if you go to another leg and they lift it straight away, then the one that they're finding hard is not because they don't understand, it's because they just don't have the same control of that leg for some reason. So you actually need to give them more time, not force the point. Yeah, so just give them time. Give them time to figure it out in their own motion without you controlling that motion. I think that's really, really important in there, and giving them a lot of rest. So if they found something really difficult, then really give them a break. So what we did also in that clinic that I was talking about before, when we had a couple of horses who found it very difficult, because it's really working their brain as well as their connection to their legs. So then we'd give them a little break, and I'd put carrots around in a different area, around a different obstacle, and they'd go and investigate for a few minutes until they kind of seem like, oh yeah, I'm back now. And then we go back and do the hard thing maybe once more, depending, you've got to learn how to read the horse there and how much they're finding it difficult. Because if you keep pushing, you lose the benefit, unfortunately. So yeah, if you really have got it, the next time they'll be better, and the next time better, and they improve the next time. But if you missed your threshold, they won't be any different the next time. So then you've missed something there. You've pushed them too far or too hard.
Right.
All good. Okay, so yeah, thanks for joining myself, Dr. Raquel Butler, and Sophie Vandenberg in today's podcast. Enjoy your horse time. Incorporate some proprioceptive exercises. Please subscribe to the Equine Functional Posture podcast so you don't miss our weekly episodes, and give us a 5-star rating so we can share more valuable insights.
We'll see you in the next exciting episode.